show with some bad news, which I think I may have just jinxed us last podcast because I was talking about, well, we had talked about it before where it was possibility that Bill Callahan could be going to the Tennessee Titans to team up with the Sun. And then I last podcast was joking around saying, oh, well, I haven't heard anything updating on that, so I'm assuming that he's staying. And I was wrong to assume that, unfortunately. So Bill Callahan is leaving to go to Tennessee to team up with his son, who was recently named the head coach of the Titans, Brian Callahan. And Derek, I was heartbroken when I saw this news because, you and I both know the change that we have kind of been able to feel and experience with the offensive line in particular and the run game while Bill has been here. So it's clearly going to be a huge loss. Finding somebody who's an adequate replacement who is going to be able to kind of fill those shoes. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But Derek, why don't you kind of give me your thoughts on what are you feeling after, unfortunately losing a great coach in Bill Callahan?
Yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking. You mentioned it. It was kind of like, oh, you heard it was a possibility and then absolutely nothing. Normally you hear, hey, they asked for permission, and it was like, bam, all of a sudden we find out they did ask for permission and he's going to Tennessee. So that's, I don't know. It was just kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. Like, first stump and now this. It's absolutely heartbreaking. It makes a lot of sense. I think when we talked about it the first time, I said like, hey, if you get a chance to coach with your father, that's a huge thing. And I want to read you this here. This is from ESPN. This is from Brian Callahan, which is the son who's the new head coach in Tennessee. And Tristan, I didn't know this, but this is the first time in NFL history that a head coach has hired his father. So that's fascinating. But this is from Brian Callahan. He said, quote, "I don't know how many fathers and sons have been coaches in the NFL. I don't think it's many. You want to be like your dad." So, it makes a lot of sense. It was one of those things when I heard he was hired to the Titans, it kind of was like, initially, I thought, okay, he's gone. And then, like you said, didn't hear anything, and then all of a sudden, bam, he is gone. So, want to read this real fast as well. Just talking about Bill Callahan, ESPN says, Bill Callahan spent the last 4 seasons as the offensive line coach for the Cleveland Browns. He was a key part in building a dominant Browns offensive line that included all-pro selection Jack Conklin at right tackle and guard Joel Bitonio. Says the Titans submitted a request to permission to interview Bill Callahan. Cleveland agreed. And yeah, so Bill Callahan is gone. And it sucks. But he is 67 years old, which I think plays a factor into this, Tristan, as well. He's been in the NFL a long time. He's had a lot of success. He's had some failures. And we'll talk about it. But just in terms of an opportunity you can't pass up. Like, listen, if my kid was I don't have a kid on the record, not yet. But if I did have a kid and they were to become a head coach in the NFL, I'd do the same thing. Unless, I don't know. I'm petty enough that if I was coaching for the Browns, I'd be like, I'm staying in Cleveland. But no, I'm just kidding. But it makes sense. So, I don't know, Tristan, it sucks, but like initial reaction, I know you had mentioned, like, hey, it's been quiet, don't expect anything. Now that it has happened, what's kind of that stages of processing this been for you?
Yeah, so it's been tough. Because first and foremost, like, I do not blame Bill Callahan, and I don't even blame the Browns for this situation. You've got Bill Callahan, fill his shoes for a moment. He's been in the NFL for years now. And it was a situation where he had a unique opportunity to coach with his son. And again, like you said, I mean, I would have taken that opportunity, like being able to work in a professional setting with my own son, like that would be amazing. Being able to work in a professional setting with my own dad, that would be amazing. Like in a rare instance where, you were able to do that, and from the Browns' perspective, this is a classy move, and it's a move that, while on the surface of it, we get worse because of it, and it sucks. Our reputation goes through the roof because we did not have to give the the permission or interview. We didn't have to allow this opportunity for Bill to go to Tennessee. We didn't have to, unless if they were going to give Bill a promotion, which would have been some type of pass game or run game coordinator or an OC title. But we allowed the permission. It was a classy move. And also from the Browns' perspective, you've completely changed this culture. Do everything you can to protect it. Because the last thing that I think either of us wants is somebody in the building who doesn't want to be there, that would prefer to be anywhere else on any of the other 32 or 31 NFL teams. We want people that want to be here. And for the first time in what feels like forever, it feels like we have a unified team that everybody wants to be here and everybody wants to row the boat, to paddle our way to success. It feels like, as corny as that is, like it's what we've got now, and we've got to protect it. So I don't disagree with the Browns' decision to let him. And ultimately, yeah, we're losing a really, really great coach. But this move makes you look better to prospective candidates in the future. And to be honest with you, I feel comfortable with getting somebody else through the door that maybe not to the level that Bill Callahan had coached up these O-linemen, but somewhere close. Like I think we can find somebody that can do that. And, Stefanski himself has been a huge proponent to this run game. And I got a feeling like he will have a very good grasp on what the O-line is meant to do, on the coaching that's required. And I feel confident that we'll be okay while losing Bill Callahan. But it sucks because, again, it's big shoes to fill. Derek, I know we were kind of talking before the show, funnily enough, about the DeJuan Jones video that we posted, because we've had several of other videos that kind of popped off for a lot of views, and not a lot of them were Brown stuff.
Ironically enough, yeah.
Right? But the DeJuan Jones video was. So, Derek, DeJuan Jones, when he stepped in this year, was absolutely fantastic. And the development of him into becoming, one of the best pass blocking right tackles in football last year. Last year before he got hurt. You also look at the development of the guy to his left, Wyatt Teller, who came in. I think we traded like a 5th or 6th round draft pick for Wyatt Teller, and next thing you know, he's a Pro Bowl caliber player. Derek, what are your concerns kind of moving forward about, potentially our ability to develop O-linemen, or to be able to potentially have guys to play at an elite level, of course, with the passing on of Bill Callahan?
Yeah, Callahan, you mentioned it. There's so many scenarios and situations we can look at of guys that were either on the Browns or got moved to the Browns and just beyond revitalized their careers. I mean, you look at what you mentioned it, Wyatt Teller. That was like John Dorsey's best trade ever. Like, Wyatt Teller, ironically enough, came in as one of these unexpected, like, little to no expectations, and he ended up popping off and becoming one of the best right guards in the NFL because of Bill Callahan, and because he fit the system and he coached him within the system. You could say the same thing, right? Ethan Posick came in and went from just a guy who was a starter in Seattle to playing well enough that he was one of the highest graded centers rather, according to PFF, in the league. And then, to the left of him, obviously Joel Bitonio is Joel Bitonio. He's amazing. And then Jedrick Wills, who we've sat here and we've complained about and we've yelled about and we've, gone to war about the left tackle position. But we have to admit, this past season, a few weeks before Jed ended up getting hurt, which is unfortunate, he started playing well as well. So when you look at this core group of guys that is your starting offensive line, Bill Callahan molded them, shaped them, and turned it into what it is now. The unfortunate thing, and you mentioned it, Dawand Jones is, somebody who came in who could have very well been a first-round draft pick, who we got later on because of multiple different reasons. For me, we talked about it, Tristan. A lot of it was off the field and then even on the field. He came into training camp, couldn't even finish a light practice without throwing up. I mean, he came a long, long way. And, I'm not saying it was just Bill Callahan, because the player has to have a willingness to change as well and learn and be coached up. But, Callahan was certainly a huge, huge part of that. So for me, Tristan, the question becomes, okay, we're in an interesting spot here where, are you going to keep Wyatt Teller long term? Should we? Probably. But there is a question mark there. Jack Conklin, coming off of an injury. Dawand Jones played incredible. Jedrick Wills, playing on his fifth-year option this next upcoming season. What's going to happen there? And then on top of that, left guard Joel Bitonio's not getting any younger. Ethan Posick signed what, 3-year deal? Is that correct?
It was a 2-year, I thought.
2-year deal? Okay, 2 or 3. Yeah, not long at all.
It was either like a 3 years, 2 years guaranteed, or just a 2-year. I can't remember specifically, but yeah, it was something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, but point being is like, hey, as good as this offensive line is right now, more likely than not, within the next year or two, there's going to be a lot of changes. I would argue at one of the guard spots at least, and probably at one of the tackle spots at least. So, you're going to want somebody who can come in and take over that room and keep it at the standard that it is now. But the problem, Tristan, and the thing I want to talk about here is with Dawand. Dawand is now coming off of exceeded expectations, was fantastic year one, was literally a brick wall against the best of the best in the NFL. He's one of the few offensive tackles that put TJ Watt on his ass. Like, that's how good Dawand Jones is. But coming off of an injury, and Jedrick Wills coming off of an injury, and Jack Conklin coming off of an injury, even though I think it's more likely that he would be moved or something would happen that he wouldn't be on the team. Regardless, all these guys are coming off of significant injuries. And your technique, your form, all that stuff is going to have to be retaught and tweaked because of these injuries. And my concern, Tristan, is for a guy like Dawand, who came in and really had to get his shit together, for lack of better terms, I'm worried he's going to have a little bit of a setback. I don't think that's going to be the case, but in terms of coaching, you need somebody there who can continue his growth, because he's that dude. As long as he can keep on the right path, he is that dude. So, Tristan, when it comes to the roster and these guys that are currently here, how important for you is this next step, like this next evolution on this offensive line? Because who knows with these guys.
Well, and the other thing I'll point to is, we talked about it in our last pod specifically. This offense is going to change a lot, and it's a little bit scary to me, the fact that we're losing Bill, because this is a year where, because we have so much change going on uh, around, especially in the pass game, you want to be able to fall back on your run game to make the transition a little bit easier. Um, because yeah, it's just so much change. And we talked about how Deuce Staley was going to bring in uh, likely a bit of RPO stuff, RPO runs, and then you would also see a lot more runs out of the gun, which was going to be another big change to our running attack. And so we look at that, and now we got to find somebody who we feel can, you know, coach to the level of Bill Callahan, excuse me, but also be able to, um, for lack of better words, be able to adapt to what we're doing in this offense. We can't. Um, it's got to be a very, very meticulous coaching hire. But I will say this: I don't worry as much about Dwan Jones, and the reason for that being is he really wasn't amazing in the run. Like, he started to get better towards the end, in run blocking, but his bread and butter has been his pass blocking. Um, and I just don't see that falling off a cliff with the change of the O line coach. Um, what I will say is this, however, I think we'll be okay through it all. We do have to find the right guy to help uh, with incorporating these new run sets in that we're going to be using. Um, that's for sure, and somebody who can teach O line at a very high level. But at the same token, this is Kevin Stefanski we're talking about here, who, his first year, he made it very well known that this was going to be a team that was a West Coast style offense that had pulling guards and, had players able to do what he wanted to do up front to open up stuff in our run game. And we've got Nick Chubb too. So, don't sleep on that. Like, we've got individuals that will be able to help iron out any potential bumps in the road. And I'm confident that we'll hire the right person, and I'm confident that, we'll be able to get through any potential issues that we face on the offensive line. But again, it's one of those where it could go bad. We could see it,
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to wait and see. But I think we've invested in a lot of talent on our offensive line that I don't see a reason why we can't still have a top 10, top 5 offensive line this year.
Yeah, and the good thing, like you mentioned, is sometimes you have those coaches on the field. And Joel is one of those guys. I think at this point in his career, I think Teller's one of those guys. And even the guys, that have developed since being here, like Posick. That dude has come in and has learned a lot. So who's to say, hey, you can't take what you learned and what benefited you and help other guys out? So I don't know. It's tough to say from a players on the field standpoint, but yeah, coaching, it's going to be important. But I don't think Callahan would leave us high and dry. I think he's probably given us, hey, I'm going to go do this, but if you want my recommendation, here's so-and-so. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I don't know.
think that's possible for sure. Yeah.
We'll figure it out. It'll be fine. It's just, it's unfortunate. It's like with Stump, but kind of on steroids. Like, Stump is as great of a person as he is, and he was a solid coach. Callahan's the best damn offensive line coach in the NFL. And Tennessee is a team that's going through what the Browns went through, rebuilding their offensive line. So,
The other thing I do want to point out as well is there is a name to look out for. I believe his name's Andy Dickerson. He was the Seahawks O-line coach this past year, who we actually had interviewed for our OC job before we gave the job Dorsey. But of course, with the Mike McDonald hire in Seattle, everything is kind of in limbo for the Seattle staff. I'll be interested to see if that's the guy that we target for our O-line position, because if we thought he was good enough to be a coordinator for us, I mean, he could potentially add some serious value as a run game coach. And I mean, it's an attractive job. it's a very attractive job. If you're going to be hired as an O-line coach, this is a very attractive job. So I'd say probably the most desirable of all the O-line coach jobs. So if Seattle lets that guy go, and you know, he's not able to secure a coordinator spot somewhere else, then I think that's the guy who you could see come here and